Hello and welcome everyone, first of all. My name is Luam. I'm one of the organizers of this event. It's part of my job as the Outreach and Employer Branding Manager of MSF Norway. I started working in MSF almost 6 years ago as a field worker, and it all started with me coming to one of these information meetings about field work. So you're very welcome to your first step of becoming an MSFer. First, I would like to start by going through some technical details with you for this evening. As you've noticed, this meeting is being recorded. You shouldn't be able to share your camera or unmute yourself. But if you are, please refrain from doing it. Thank you. And if you have technical problems, there isn't very much that we can do on our end to help you. It's usually one or a couple of things that work for people. You can try to either log off and then back in again, or you can try to change to a different device. We have turned off the chat during the beginning of the event to keep the questions for the Q&A at the end. And we will invite you to send in your questions in the chat starting at 20 past 7, and the Q&A will start at 7:30. But I can almost guarantee that most of your questions will already have been answered during this meeting. So just sit tight and listen closely. There's going to be a lot of information. Tonight, we are focusing on mental health projects in MSF. I'm going to introduce our guests very soon, or my co-hosts, let's say. But first, I just want to say something to introduce the topic. It was in 1998 that MSF formally recognized the importance of providing mental health care as part of our emergency work. And more than 20 years later, in 2019 alone, our staff provided around 400,000 individual mental health consultations and 100,000 group consultations in our projects globally. We work with mental health in a range of different settings, and you're going to hear about a couple of those settings tonight. I just want to stress that the needs of mental health profiles in our projects are still large, and we need both clinical psychologists and psychiatrists, as these are both professional groups which are still underrepresented or lacking in many of the contexts and countries where we work. You will hear examples of how we work with mental health listening in tonight. So here is our schedule for tonight. First, this little introduction, and then we'll talk about the MSF movement. You'll hear a presentation from one of our field workers, and then we're going to talk about the recruitment criteria, who we're looking for, how we work, more about the general requirements and how to become a relevant applicant, our offer as an employer, the recruitment process, and then we'll go into a Q&A. And with that, I would like to introduce my colleagues so you can know who will be talking with you tonight. First, we have Bodil, who is a field worker, a psychologist, who will tell us about her assignments in Libya and Iraq. And this will take around 40 minutes. And then we have Emily, our recruitment responsible, who will tell you more about our organization and go through all the things that you need to know before applying to become a field worker. And tonight we are also lucky enough to have our own psychosocial focal point, Shanti, present at the meeting with us, especially today because we are focusing on mental health. So Shanti, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. So, hello everyone, welcome. My name is Shanti and I am the clinical psychologist working at MSF Norway offices. That means that I'm responsible for the psychosocial training and follow-up of international mobile staff. And I'm also a member of what we call the SMS team, which is a group of MSF psychologists connected to our operational center in Brussels. And we get deployed to do on-site debriefings after critical incidents or if a project needs psychosocial support due to accumulative stress. So when you go on missions, I will be the one providing psychosocial briefings before deployment, field support if needed during your time in the mission, and debriefings upon your return. I've been in this position since it was started as a 100% position, which was in 2018.
Thank you, Shanti. Then, Emily, the floor is yours. Go ahead.
Yes, so hi everybody. I'm Emily. I'm from Belgium and I'm in charge of the recruitment of all our field staff that goes out in projects. I started with MSF in 2010. And since then, I've first been working for 5 years in one of our headquarters that is called the Operational Center of Brussels. And during that time, I went on field assignments and then landed 6 years ago in Norway, where since then I've been working in the human resource department, really on purely the recruitment of our Norwegian and Icelandic staff. And the field assignments that I did over time started with in 2010, Libya. I worked in a project in Tripoli at the time of the Arab Spring when it all started, and we were providing their healthcare to people that were excluded of the medical care. So a lot of migrants or a lot of people that had no papers, no legal documents to be in the country, that were marginalized and not provided for in terms of medical care. So working in a project there as a human resource and finance manager, as we call it. And we're going to talk about profiles later on this evening. Then second mission was in South Sudan in a small place called Doro, up north in the country, where our project is providing medical care for internally displaced people. So people within South Sudan and within the border with Sudan that are being displaced due to different reasons, of which the conflict, the humanitarian crisis that is currently happening, as well as an influence by climate also. And then later on, I went to Lesbos in Greece at the very start of the migration in 2015, where there we were providing medical care in camps where the migrants were placed by the Greek authorities once they managed to make their way over to the water, unfortunately, the Mediterranean, in horrendous circumstances that you know, and that MSF is still also providing for through our activities that happen in the Mediterranean Sea on board ship. And in that mission, it was also a lot of setting up of the project in terms of our human resources, because the needs were so big that we had to recruit a lot of staff. We needed many languages to be able to communicate with our patients in the camps. And clearly a big component that still exists today on mental health needs with the patients that we are meeting there. Later on then I got to go to Haiti to do local recruitment, to find a way to let our Haitian staff be able to go themselves working in projects in other countries, just like you would go from Norway, work in other countries. Well, our local staff also gets this possibility to apply for international deployment. So that's a mission I did. And then as well as a remuneration analysis mission that we will talk about tonight, called benchmarking, where we go and find out how we employ our staff in comparison to the local market and the local practices to make sure that we are a fair employer. I went and did that for our staff in Liberia. So that's in a nutshell a bit myself. I work together with Luam closely, and also a team member with Shanti in the office, and I'm gonna take you tonight through different steps of the origin of MSF. And we refer a lot to MSF. It's Leger Uten Grenzer, coming from the word Médecins Sans Frontières, and also really what profiles we're looking for and what we provide as an employer. So let me start with sharing my presentation, starting over here. And what I wish to say is that normally this evening we would be holding it in our office, having you all there with us and being able to see faces, reactions, questions, and really hear you and feel you. I can't do that in the same way tonight behind my screen, but at the end of the night, we have a question and answer part, and we value it tremendously, because this is your chance to talk to real people, to ask Bodil, to ask myself, and Shanti is there as well. And of course, Luam is there as well with her experience, because there's no such things like real people that have experience of the organization, and that you can just ask whatever you want. So please, when things pop up in your mind, write them down, put them down, because we wish to address all questions tonight. There is no stupid questions, and we're there for you to make the time and the safe space to have this conversation with you tonight. So if we look at the first slide here with the MSF mission, as you can see, it's twofold.
Emilia, you're not
Yes.
sharing.
And I am indeed not sharing. So that's the joys of the IT part of things. I'll just fix that now. And here we go. And there. And now you should all see the mission of MSF. So on the one hand, we are a medical humanitarian organization, and our role is to provide medical care, emergency aid, regardless of race, religion, gender, political affiliation, and always based on needs first. We will constantly adjust our activities, our projects based on needs. And that means also the people that we need to work in the field will be based on the needs at the time in our projects. And secondly, there is the part of témoignage. That is the part of speaking out, bearing witness, because our teams in the field, they are witness of, for instance, neglected humanitarian situations, of violence, of situations that do not make it to the international media. They don't get reported about. And our teams are there to publicly speak out about, for instance, forgotten crises, to alert also the public about the way that the humanitarian aid around the world by the whole humanitarian community is being addressed, is being divided, the way that governments and finance systems are allocating money to one crisis or another. Well, we are there to speak about what we see for real on the field, and that is through the part of the témoignage. That is very important because originally MSF was created by a bunch of doctors and a bunch of journalists that came together and set up the organization. This is where our twofold mission comes from. And now I will have Luam sharing a video to show you the principles by which we work.
I don't see what she's wearing, how he earns money,
what phone he has.
I don't see who she prays to, that she's a threat.
Which border they crossed.
I don't see if he's a soldier,
If he's a refugee.
which side they're on.
I just see a child.
a human being, a patient. Doctors Without Borders. Independent, neutral,
Impartial.
So you can see that MSF is working by 3 principles, and that is the impartiality, the neutrality, and the independence. And we are working by the 3 principles that you see. Offering medical care irrespective of race, religion, gender, political affiliation, the fact that we do not provide for religious, economic, and political interests, we don't take sides, and the fact that we are financially independent and we do not let pressure from governments or other parties having an influence play a role on the way that we provide medical care. And that is very important in the way we work, and MSF is known for that. And we started in 1971 in Paris. So if you make a quick calculation, last year we actually celebrated our 50th year. That's quite some time. If you think of it, that's quite some history. It started with a bunch of doctors and journalists around the table. And today we are over 41,000 staff around the world, mainly locally hired colleagues, and also a number of international staff. And we have grown to be present in 5 operational centers in Paris, Brussels, Amsterdam, Barcelona, and Geneva. And that is divided over 34 offices. And more now we are going towards bringing the center of decisions and power that is in the operational centers closer to the field. So there is a lot of changes and adaptations and new processes around in the whole organization to really bring the decision-making power closer to our projects, closer to our patients and the teams working with them. And MSF is an emergency organization. So our purpose is to be ready on the ground within 48 hours when an emergency happens, like for instance, a natural catastrophe, like an earthquake, to be on the ground delivering the medical care. And if you think 48 hours is really little, because in those circumstances, very often the places where people need the care, they become very difficult to access because simply the country is taken apart. There might be no more roads, there might be no more electricity. So MSF is very good at finding solutions with all the 50 years history that we have to access the patients as soon as possible, because those hours are critical. And to be able to do that, we have set up a whole big supply system, a whole supply chain, big division that is international, and that works from purchasing the medicines, purchasing the material, purchasing the tools that our operations, our staff needs to work with, purchasing it to delivering it on the ground. And we're trying to do this within 48 hours when an emergency happens. So for instance, we have emergency prepared kits. And for instance, for our surgeons, they would have a ready-made kit ready there for them to be on the first next plane, so that they just take it along on that plane and get down there and have the tools to start treating patients. This is how MSF works. But also to move so many goods, so many medicines that need a cold chain from the moment of purchasing to delivering it to the patient. So all of this is possible thanks to our supply chain, for which we need a lot of staff. And that is what we will show you when we will talk about the profiles that we need. Something interesting also about the way that MSF works is that I said we were financially independent, and that is that up to 95% of our funds comes from the private donor. That means that maybe you are a donor, maybe your parents are, your neighbor, or maybe tonight you've decided to actually start donating to MSF. Well, that is really our strength, because with that, we know better when we have the regular donors. If you become, like, for instance, a monthly donor, we're able to know how much money is coming in. We're able to plan better our activities based on how much money we know we will have. And we're also able to respond to emergencies, to straight away have funds to send our staff out as soon as possible. And we don't need to start collecting money first around before we can actually respond to the needs. So our financial activities are audited every year, and that is available on our website. And another component of our organization is that we're an international association directed by its members. I am a member of MSF. Every one of my colleagues here tonight is a member of the association. That means that we have actually a voting right into the decisions of the organization. And we vote every year at our General Assembly to elect our boards. Our boards are constituted by former field staff, and they have a big voice in influencing the directions that the organization is taking on the big topics and also some smaller topics. And that means that we're very invested because we have an ownership, a voice in our organization. So it's much more than just a job. And something that you might all know as Norwegians is that in 1999 we received the Nobel Peace Prize here in Oslo, that we allocated to the research for neglected diseases. And our field staff representation is twofold. There is on the one, yes.
This is where we actually give the word to Bodil.
Yes, that is where we give the word to Bodil, of course. And I wish to also even share something that I'm really happy for, is that I actually got to recruit Bodil a few years ago. And it's so great to have seen how she has evolved and the missions that she's been on. And I know many of her peers are here tonight in mental health, clinical psychologists, psychiatrists. So we're so glad to be bringing you all together, as well as the other profiles that can now listen to her. So I'll hand over the presentation and the mic.
Okay, thank you very much. It's very nice to be here together with you. So could you please, Luam, put on my presentation, please?
Yes, it's coming.
Thank you. Yes. So it's true what Emily said. I also went to an information meeting, but in Oslo then. And hello and welcome. Now I'm here. I'm a psychologist and a specialist in clinical psychology since 2006. And I've been working as a psychologist in different areas of public health care in Norway since 1999. And in 2021, I went on 2 missions with the Doctor Without Borders. First as a mental health supervisor in Misrata in Libya, and then as a mental health activity manager in Baghdad in Iraq. So next slide, please. So for the agenda for today, of course, I'm going to talk about my experiences working in Libya and in Iraq. I'm going to tell you a bit about the project and the different setups, because working in Libya and working in Iraq was a very different thing. And I also want to talk a bit about the role, how it is working as a psychologist in MSF, in the mental health team. And if I have the time, I will check with you, Luam. I have a patient story from Iraq. We'll see about that. But first, why working for MSF? You know, I was curious, and like I said, I went to a meeting like this at the office in Oslo before Corona time. And at that time, I had been working at the same place for almost 15 years at Blå Kors Haugaland Center with outpatient and inpatient treatment for people with drug problems. And of course, many other problems as well, like traumas, anxiety, depression, psychosis. And I thought I wanted really to do something different, something else, but I didn't want to leave my job. It's a very fine job, and I'm still working here. I'm sitting in my office right now, by the way. And I talked to my boss, and I got to leave. But because of the COVID situation, it took a while before I left out in the field. Next slide, please. Okay, so then Libya and Iraq, as I told you, it's 2 very different projects and of course 2 very different countries. And Libya, as you know, is in North Africa, bordered to the north by the Mediterranean Sea, to the west by Algeria and Tunisia, to the south by Niger and Chad, to the east by Sudan and Egypt. And Libya has a large desert area. The setup where I worked was in Misrata. It's about where the red arrow is. It's a city 200 kilometers east of Tripoli, the capital. And its population is about 450 inhabitants. And as an estimate, the whole country is around 7 million. And Misrata is the 3rd city of Libya by its population. And MSF has been operating its current activities in Misrata since 2017. And the focus is the migrant population. And in 2021, when I was there, the main target was still the migrant population with a multidisciplinary approach. And then you have in this setup the medical, the mental health, and the protection approach. On the right side, you see Iraq is a country in Western Asia, bordered by Turkey to the north, Iran to the east, the Persian Gulf, and Kuwait to the southeast, Saudi Arabia to the south, Jordan to the southwest, and Syria to the west. And of course, you know Baghdad, the capital and largest city, estimated around 7 million people alone in the city, and maybe around 40 million people totally in the country. And in 2017, the Paris section, like Emily told you about, the OCP opened the Baghdad Medical Rehabilitation Center, BMRC. And it was like in a response to the high number of casualties of violence and war in Baghdad. And the main target, the patient, is then the local people living in Baghdad in need of rehabilitation after surgery. So next slide, please. Yes. And we will first take a look at the Misrata project in Libya. And here you can actually see some of the staff outside the office. And it is a low profile project. It means, for example, that the staff, they don't wear clothes with MSF logo, and the cars, they don't have MSF logo or stickers. And this is due to security reasons. And it also meant that we couldn't go out for a walk, and we Norwegians, we like to do that, huh? And we had to use drivers all the time, and outside the office, the female staff had to use scarf to cover the hair and generally have wide and long clothes. And as I said, the main target is to assist migrants through different activities and at different areas. So this means we didn't meet the patient at the office, for instance. We reached out to different locations, and I will tell you about it. And right before I came, the authorities closed the detention centers in Misrata. It's the blue arrow, so it was not possible for me to go there at all. So please, next slide. And also push the arrow, please, Luang. Yes, thank you. I worked as the mental health supervisor in Misrata, and this means supporting the mental health team regarding their activities, for example, with planning, coordinate, training, and supervision. The mental health team included, where I worked, one local psychologist, two local psychosocial workers, one translator, and the mental health supervisor, who was me at that time. I also recruited one new local psychologist in the period I was working there. And the mental health and psychosocial activities started at the end of April 2019. And the basis of the mental health activities in the Misrata project can be found in the intervention pyramid at the bottom, as you can see. And the bottom of the pyramid, at the first level or layers, is the basic need and security. It's like clothes, it's like food, warm and safe place to stay, for example. And the second level is to ensure contact with community and family. The third level is about focused but non-specialized activities like support groups. And the last level is specialized activities like medication medication or specific techniques like cognitive behavioral therapy, for example. And I tell you this also to get you to be more familiar with how we worked, because we use this as a model for working. And at the right side, the picture is in green, is a picture of an internal document for MSF, the Mental Health and Psychosocial Support Guideline. And it's really describing, for example, the intervention pyramid and strategies in detail. And of course, a lot more, because it's over 300 pages actually. And it's based on different conditions, and it's about best practice, it's evidence-based, and it's how proposal of how you can work in the field. Then it's very useful and comprehensive. Next slide, please. Okay, and like I said, the Misrata project is about the migration population. And most of them has been multiple traumatized during their flight. And we generally worked with a highly vulnerable target population. Sahara and sea crossing attempts, shipwrecks, and being in the hands of human traffickers for months, for years maybe, and tortured for ransom are very common experiences in the target group. And to give you some examples of what we did, you can see activities in the different locations in the slides. I wrote Sapa Hospital, TB unit, shelter, prisons, and in Bani Walid, and I'm going to talk a bit about it. So first, we had regular visits to Safa Hospital, where the patient were, because of different kind of injuries or surgeries. It could be like gunshots or accidents, car crash, fall from heights. And the patient, they didn't stay there for a long time. And it was not the MSF hospital. But we visited new patients as soon as they arrived to assess the mental health, to assess their needs and what we could do to help. This could, for example, include clothes and hygiene kits due to level 1 in the pyramid, because maybe they came without clothes, or they had to throw away their clothes, and so then of course they need it. And we also lended them the MSF phones, so they could call their families and friends at home and tell them really that they were alive. And this would be according to level 2 or layer 2 in the pyramid, keeping in touch with friends and family. Because many of the migrants had been traveling for several months, up to years actually, and with no contact with family and friends, and they thought they were dead. And I was very touched by the fact that they were actually very ill, but we gave them the phone, and they remembered the phone number to the family, and they called them and they talked, and it was very, very touching. 10 minutes from the office by car was the TB unit. It's actually the unit on the picture. It was a building from 2019 with 17 beds, all by MSF, treating migrants with tuberculosis. Here the migrants stayed for a longer time, and then of course we as the mental health team could offer also other activities, and in addition to the first and second layer in the pyramid. So then we had several and regular visits per week, and we could, for example, conducting recreational activities. There were a lot of young people especially young men, young boys from 13, 14, 15 years old, traveling alone or traveling together. We could have different kinds of talking groups, support group. We had some kind of psychoeducation. We had some sport, doing sport together, playing a bit football. And of course, we did assessment and counseling if needed. To say something about the shelter, because early January 2021, the MSF shelter opened a facility in Misrata for migrants specifically needed from the protection point of view. As I told you, it was a multidisciplinary approach. So we had the medical, obviously, and mental health, and also protection. It could be, for example, for minors traveling alone, could be medical health concern, disabilities, and so on. And here also the mental health team had very regular visits, daily, I would say. And the aim was to provide holistic health care and give support to the residents while searching for long-term options for the migrants. And most often out of Libya. And we as a mental health team provided activities at all 4 layers of the intervention pyramid then. And the local psychologist collaborated with a local psychiatrist regarding the need of medication, because here we had the time and to support and also to help the migrants in a better way, because they were staying for a longer period. In the prisons, the local doctors and the local psychologist and the male psychosocial worker could visit the local prisons, but international staff could not. It was not allowed from the governmental side due to security reasons. And we also gave support to migrants staying in the safe house in Beni Walid, 130 kilometers from Misrata. MSF was not in charge of the safe house, and it's a compound with a couple of bedrooms, outdoor kitchen, outdoor bathroom. And migrants who had been released from hangars and dumped outside of this facility was taken into the safe house. And in most cases, they were in very bad shape with severe malnutrition, dehydration, scabies, and other different illnesses, and traumas from torture and gunshots, for example. So we could provide with the basic medical consultation, and we of course talk to the migrants and try to assessing their mental health and what we could do to help. So on the next slide, you will see the picture of the safe house. It's on the right there, and you know, frankly, at the first time I was there, I was a bit shocked, because it is what you see, actually. This was one of the bedrooms, the picture of one of the bedrooms. So what about the challenges working in Libya, in Misrata? I briefly told you about the security situation. It was a lot we couldn't do. Going for a walk, and if we needed to go somewhere, we needed to go by the drivers to take us where we wanted, and we didn't have that many drivers, so we needed to be patient, for example. Plans and meetings could be stopped due to security reasons, and most of the time we didn't get any good explanations. Monday to Thursday, and after work, we went to the guest house where all the international staff stayed together. We were from 6, 7, 8, 9 people. We were eating together, playing cards, playing music. We had a little gym, and I did CrossFit trainings for the one who did. We tried to, have fun in the evening and in the weekend time. I got used to happy shooting. It happened a lot, but I really have to say I felt safe all the time staying in Misrata and Libya. Was quite strict, as I told you, but it's because of the reason. The last thing who could also be challenging was, when you're working with migrants, you're working with translators. For example, at one point, I had to use 2 translators talking to one patient, and was a lot of people in the room in a way. And it was from Hausa to Arabic. That was one translator, and the other translator was from Arabic to English, so I could understand, and the patient and me in between, trying to make a valuable conversation. So it was not easy. And also working with people on the move can be challenging, because migrants, they are on the move, and maybe they don't want to stay in Misrata. A lot of them, of course, wanted to go to Europe. And then you really didn't know if they were going to be there tomorrow. So you had to really use the moment anyway. And the context in Misrata also changed a lot. It was the authorities, like I told you, it was the security, they closed the detention center, and we had to change the setup a bit. So it was like Emily said, you go where the needs are, and you really learn to be flexible, I would say. Yeah. And if you go to the next slide, please. So how it affected me, because it did. And I really got into the more political side, and the EU system and the economical side, and also Norway supporting this. So, and I also wrote this article then, and it got published in NRK Ytri. If you're interested, of course, you can read it. But yeah, it was a way of, I think, processing all the months in Libya and trying to do something with it, maybe. I don't know, but it was good to do it. So next slide, please. Yeah, and now we move from Libya, and we go to Iraq, to Baghdad Medical Rehabilitation Center.
Bodil, I just wanted to say we're a bit over time, so if you can try to take the rest in about 10 minutes, that would be
yes,
great.
I will do. Thank you for telling me. So could you please show the slides again? Yes. Target victims of trauma, post-orthopedic surgery related or not related to violence. It is limbs fractures and amputations. So it's all about medical rehabilitation. And these patients were locals. We only had one migrant in the whole period I was there, so they were locals. So, and this picture is in front of the outpatient department in Baghdad. And this boy is using a walker, coming to physiotherapy treatment. So, please, next slide. And there's 2 projects. The Paris have their OCP, they have the COVID project, and they have the BMRC. And I worked, as I said, in BMRC. So please, next slide. The doctor in the middle, Dr. Aus, he's the medical activity manager, told me in his briefing at the beginning of my stay that the public hospitals are very good in doing the surgery, but the patient is being discharged to their homes the same day or the day after the surgery, leaving it up to the patient and their families and caretakers to rehabilitate. And this means that early post-operative comprehensive rehabilitation doesn't really exist. And it's poor prognosis, it's poor nursing care, poor pain management. You have the infection, refractures, so you have poor outcome. Next slide, please. And also push the arrow. Yes. To the left, it's a picture of the IPD, the inpatient department, and the bed capacity. And in the picture to the right, you see the OPD, outpatient department, and what it includes. Next slide, please. So then why? Why BMRC? Well, it is because we know early rehabilitation, it works. And in the coming years, BMRC aims to develop the collaboration with the Ministry of Health to advocate for early post-operative comprehensive rehabilitation, becoming really a standard in least in 3 public hospitals in Baghdad. This means that the BMRC model is being implemented in the 3 public hospitals. And at the end of my period, we started doing assessment at the public hospitals, and I was in charge of assessing the mental health services at the public hospitals, which was non-existing actually. And at the next slide, you can see the patient in the middle, and it's an illustration of the patient-centered approach, and we working together with all the teams together with the patient to help the patient then. Next slide, please. So the mental health team consists of 1 national psychiatrist, and he also had the same role that I had in Libya, like being a mental health supervisor. Then there is 2 psychosocial counselors and 1 translator. And in my period, I recruited the translator and 1 of the psychosocial counselor, both women. The education system is so very different from ours, and there is no education of being a psychosocial counselor. So in the team, 1 of the counselor was a lawyer, and the other one, the one I recruited, was a medical doctor. And she really wanted to become a surgeon, but also had this interest in mental health. So it was very interesting, and I think it was a good choice of her than staying at BMRC, learning something about both. It was very, very good. So I want to tell you more about the MAHAM role and responsibility before I stop, because I think it could be interesting. So please, next slide. So I've tried to set up the different roles, and there could be more, but I think this is the most important one. You see the MAM, it's what we call the mental health activity manager in the middle. And then you have the different role and responsibilities. And I gave many trainings every week, sometimes every day. And of course to the mental health team, but also to all the staff. For example, I had a training regarding psychosocial methods in pain management. And other than that, I had trainings for basic counseling, communication skills, signs and symptoms for mental health disorders, CBT, suicide risk and assessments, stress management, motivational interviews, and so on. And I also gave supervision, supported the team, updated the SOP. It's like the standard operational procedures, It's how you should organize the work, the patient pathways, and the mental health file pathways. And I was in charge of implementing a new database and follow up the clinical activity and statistic. And regarding others, it could be like the budget, the plan of the future, the assessment, and collaborating with the other teams, of course. So working as a psychologist and working with patients it's only a tiny part of the work. It's a lot about also doing this organizational thing and managing the team actually. All right, Luan. I think I'm finished, and I don't think we can go through the patient story because we are in short of time. So I suggest we stop here and maybe save some time for questioning, for example, afterwards. What do you say to that?
Thank you, Bodil. I think we'll do that, and we rather, yeah, like you said, save the time for the Q&A. Thank you so much for your very interesting presentation. And I'll just give the word straight over to Emily, who will take us through the rest of your presentation about MSF.
Yeah.
And who we're looking for. Thank you.
So here we are. I am doing so. As we've shown you before, so we're about 41,000 staff around the world, with a majority of our locally hired colleagues. And overall in 2020, for instance, we really had this repartition of about 50% of our staff that is purely non-medical, and that is needed for the 50% of medical and paramedical staff. So all the support functions are extremely valuable and needed to be able to make our medical projects run. And maybe when we will take questions later, Bodil will be able also to refer to you, or you can directly, as a non-medical, ask a question later to Bodil in how your profile was actually enabling her work as part of the paramedical then to be able to function, because it's always very interesting to see the links between the different profiles. And now we're digging in the heart of that is the question, the big question, who's working for Leger Uten Grenzen, going out from countries like Norway, Iceland, and going out to projects. So the list of profiles that we're showing you tonight is the ones that we need in the field, and they're all described on our website in detail, really giving you an overview of what you do and also what is needed for you, the requirements, and also which conditions you would be working by when you work for Leger Uten Grenzen. So please make sure, if you haven't done so yet, take the time afterwards to go and read in detail your profile. The question to ask yourself when you're wondering, okay, but am I fitted? Do I respond to the needs of MSF? Can I go out? Do they need me? Is my experience relevant? Is really to ask yourself, well, in my profession, what is MSF doing in the field? And for instance, if we take first the group of the medical staff, the question for our medical doctors is, what does MSF do in the field with medical doctors? Well, medical doctors are working with intensive care, so we need intensivists. Medical doctors are working really with emergency medicine. This is a profile we need. Infection prevention control we work with. Pediatrics, that's why we need doctors with pediatric skills. Public health, internal medicine, infectious diseases, hepatitis C, HIV, TB, and then after that, like I mentioned, working a lot with children with the pediatrics, and then also the group that is the hardest to actually provide for our missions, where there is never enough of them, is the whole group of the surgeons, where orthopedic skills are relevant, working with plastic surgery, working with trauma surgery, as well as in that group, the anesthesiologists working along with our surgeons, and the gynecologists, because we are really also a baby factory. In a way of saying, I say it with a smile, but yes, there are so many MSF babies born around the world, and the amount that a normal Norwegian hospital does within a year can sometimes be accounted for. For instance, in some of our projects in Afghanistan, in a place called Khost, where we have a maternity of hospital, our staff delivers the amount of babies that are born in a month in Khost, that is within a year in Norway. So just picturing that really surgeons, anesthesiologists, gynecologists are profiles that we always are in desperate need of. And then, of course, the very important psychiatrists, for which we have especially created also this evening tonight, along with the other mental health specialists, and of course all the other staff that is needed around them. But in psychiatry, we are really trying to build the networking, being able to reach out to yourself, your colleagues, maybe other people you know about, to really spread the word that you are relevant, we need you, and we don't have enough psychiatrists to care for all the mental health needs. So don't hesitate to take the opportunity for tonight to spread the word further. And then on the paramedical side, we have, of course, working with all the children and the babies, we have our midwives, and they also work on projects of sexual violence, of termination also of pregnancy that MSF has to provide in the medical projects. And then our nurses, along with the doctors, same kind of backgrounds are needed in infection prevention, control, intensive care, emergency medicine, public health, pediatrics, neonatal. And then, like I said, our clinical psychologists, very big need, and also within the hospital settings, people with a background in clinical pharmacy are also very relevant. And then working with health promotion, that is really the awareness raising of accessing our medical projects, making sure that everything is in line with the local customs, the local traditions, the local beliefs, making sure that people know that they can access medical care if they come to an MSF facility, and that our staff is aware of what lives within the community that they are providing for. A lot of this whole bridging of information, knowledge sharing is happening with our health promoters that might have a background in anthropology or sociology or directly public health, really. And then working with epidemiologists, that is very important in the work we do, and we can't explain it better than you've experienced yourself with COVID. And then the laboratory specialists, for instance, having a background with microbiology or virology. And then on the side of the non-medicals, which, for instance, Luam and I are a part of, well, in that big family, that is 50% of our staff, we have first the supply family that I've talked about, to be able to make everything run with all the equipment that we need and the speed at which we wish to work. So having a background in supply chain or in procurement or in warehousing is what we're looking for. And then also the work that we do with water and sanitation. So that's the guys working with the hygiene protocols, making sure that water is treated and drinkable, making sure that waste management is provided for in our projects, and other parts of it. That's with water and sanitation engineers, with plumbers that come in as relevant. And then we move over really to what we call the logistics family. And that is if you are an electrician or a mechanic, if you are an architect or a constructor for all the part of the construction project, or even if you have a big experience with air operations within a humanitarian sector already, that can come in relevant. And then on the IT, ICT, really skills that can be relevant if they come also along, for instance, a supply profile that has very strong IT and information system skills. And then we need the biomedical engineers to take care of all our equipment, of all the biomedical part of the work. And then there is really also the general logistician. So someone not with one of the clear backgrounds that I've just named, but Jack with a trade, women that have touched on electricity, on building, hutte, on installing so many things within a construction, but you're not quite qualified for it, but you've got the hands and the technical mind for it. These are our general logisticians, really. And that is the kind of whole family of the logisticians. And then people with a background in health facility management. And then on the other family, again, we're into the finance, so having a background with accounting, with budgeting, being in charge of very big annual forecast planning, being used to really treat big budgets, and strong management of the teams that work within a finance department. And another background very needed is people with human resource profession. So that have really worked within the field of human resources as a specialist within that, and yourself also having been in charge of staff. And then we're on the remuneration analysis that I mentioned as one of my personal experiences in benchmarking with strong analytical skills, being able to survey, to negotiate, to access information, to go out and analyze the way that we employ our staff in comparison to the local market, to make sure that we're employing our colleagues locally in a fair way compared to the practices of the country, and also the other NGOs, for instance, present in a country. And then we're on to journalists and humanitarian advocacy. Those two profiles, they for sure, as a basic criteria, need to be bilingual. And that means English French or English Arabic. Having an extra third language that is quite fluent is definitely a plus, but there's a need for a basic first bilingualism. And I'm sorry to say Norwegian doesn't count when you're in the project. And to have done this profession within the humanitarian sector, so to already have really had the experience from the humanitarian analysis, whether as a communications person or a humanitarian advocacy manager. Then moving on to, yes, so here you see the world map. And all the red areas are actually the countries where MSF has projects to provide medical care. That's 88 around the world. And now we're going to show you a little video really sharing with you the medical action that MSF is doing as a whole global organization. So Luam's going to share that in a second.
Welcome. Today you decided to wear this t-shirt. Wearing an MSF t-shirt means being part of a worldwide medical humanitarian organization. 35,000 staff members around the world wear this t-shirt. Dozens of nationalities are represented. MSF staff work in nearly 70 countries to provide emergency medical care and relief supplies directly to people who need it most. Teams wearing this t-shirt provide medical assistance to people struggling to survive violence, war, epidemics, hunger, denial of healthcare, population displacements, and natural disasters. Providing the best quality care in any and all circumstances requires a good supply network. That's why, since the 1980s, we've developed specialized logistics able to respond in real time.
En moins de 24 heures, nous pouvons expédier l'équivalent de 2 hôpitaux complets. Je peux vous garantir que cette boîte sera dans 24 heures à Haïti.
Ici, à l'hôpital des Tabards, nous prenons en charge 1500 patients par mois.
Wearing this t-shirt means that we all engage to follow certain principles laid out in MSF's charter.
The principles of independence and impartiality are actually our strongest security measures. So when in the field we are wearing this t-shirt, in a way we are protected because people know that we are outside of the conflict.
Médecins Sans Frontières provides impartial help without discrimination and independently of any political powers. We are neutral and we do not take sides in conflicts. We treat our patients with dignity and respect for their cultural and religious beliefs. Impartiality is essential. We treat each patient on the basis of medical need, not on any other criteria. 90% of our budget comes from private donors all over the world. This generous funding gives us freedom to independently choose our actions without interference from political and economic powers. Our work in emergencies often leads us to speak out publicly to highlight forgotten crises, to mobilize other aid organizations, to draw attention to weaknesses in the aid system, to demand access to people trapped in conflict zones, or to campaign for fair access to essential medicines for all. Wearing an MSF t-shirt means being part of a worldwide medical humanitarian organization that speaks out freely and acts with total independence.
So, I'll share with you my presentation again. Here we go. There we are. So you can see the four, the four dimensions in which we give the medical action of MSF in the world. And now I will let you just take a read of the operations that we have on the medical side as well as on the non-medical side in our projects around the world. So our staff on the 41,000 plus staff around the world is represented by 91% of our locally hired colleagues. And so our locally hired colleagues are our knowledge. They're ambassadors in the communities to represent really what MSF is doing there and to justify the fact that we are on the ground, to make sure that the local populations come and access us. And therefore, in each role that we've shown you tonight that we need, you will by default be a manager when you go into a project. That means you will have a team to be a manager too. You will have direct line management. And we want you to come out and take very good care of our staff, because you'll go out for not that long. They might be working there for years already, and they might continue on for many more years. So when we have such a rotation of managers that is in charge of a team, we wish you to be good at supervising, good at training, good at people management skills, to have really done that already here in your previous experience, so that you don't go out and our staff becomes the guinea pig of your management skills, but really to have experienced and proven it to yourself already before, that you are a good manager, able to work with the added circumstances of what a project is. And the general criteria. So for everybody, it is to understand and commit to our charter that is accessible on our website, because that's the very basic contract in a way with the organization. And to have a minimum, very minimum of 2 years relevant experience. That's just really to say, okay, you need to have done it a bit, but what the general basic criteria is to be strong in your shoes, to have worked for long enough where you say, okay, I'm confident enough, I feel strong for me here as a professional to be able to go out in totally different and challenging circumstances and to build my skills and my professionalism again out in another environment. So it is a very basic minimum. And then to be available from 9 to 12 months to go on your first mission. It is really needed to go out long enough to experience long enough how it is to arrive there, to go through being new, learning new things, getting to know MSF and how it all functions also, on top of course, all the local practices, to get to your level of professionalism once you're out there after some months, to put back into the project and really be of use to the project. So you need to go out long enough, except for our gynecologists, anesthesiologists and surgeons, as well as the emergency doctors and the intensive care doctors. They will go out on shorter assignments. Languages is a key. You've seen the repartition around the world. So having English plus, for instance, French or Spanish or Arabic or Portuguese at a minimum level of B1 and feeling quite confident, especially on the oral fluency, is needed. Of course, when you have an outstanding background, an outstanding experience, or you've worked with other international organizations, we still ask you to apply, send us your CV. So that is something we wish to say, but don't hesitate to invest in whatever language course until you're ready to apply, because it can always really be a valuable asset. And the people management skills that I refer to, and also experience from traveling and working in low income countries, so you don't just realize the state of the world when you land on your first assignment. Along with the management skills, it can really be of use to have mentoring, coaching skills, because so much of your role as a manager is also capacity building and training up of staff and seeing where there are needs to develop more with knowledge, with training, so that our staff can gather all this and little by little can take over and own the project even more fully and themselves grow into manager roles. For the medicals among you, we need you to have the tropical medicine course from an accredited course that is available on our website, except again for the gynecologists, anesthesiologists, surgeons, intensivists, and emergency doctors. And like I said, this group can go out on a shorter assignment of 3 months for your first assignment. We need you to be available for 3 months. We need you to be, like Budil said, the flexibility and adaptability, and wishing to go out on several assignments. That's like probably one of the most important things that you need to remember of tonight, is that to say it quite directly, MSF is not a matter of going out on one assignment to put as a sexy line on your CV. MSF is about going on several assignments, because you will get trained, you will acquire so much knowledge over your first assignments that we really need you to put it back into the organization so that the projects really become rich from the professional that you have grown to be throughout your assignments. And this is over several missions, really. And
Emily?
Yes.
So now you have
Yes.
5 minutes left, and I also just want to say the chat is open, so
Yeah.
people are welcome to send in questions for the Q&A that will soon start.
Yeah, so please send all your questions, and Luam will look at them and select them while I still speak. And yes, being in good health. For the people over 60 at the moment, we need to take it on a case by case, simply, unfortunately, still because of COVID-19 restrictions. And to have as a Norwegian or Icelandic the nationality or the permanent residence is what we need. We have limitations on people with temporary permits, and the opportunities for you. So it's a dynamic, it's multicultural. You'll be working with colleagues from so many different countries, and you will learn so much of the local culture where you are. Your colleagues will tell you stories from their families. You will maybe in some projects, for instance, you might end up being invited, to the birth celebration of a colleague, etc. You'll get so rich from a cultural aspect, from people, really. And we also offer you a personalized development with MSF. So the person that will be in charge of you to build your career over the years will listen to your interests. As you go on your assignments, you might be trained on one aspect or another that MSF works within the field, because we're really trying to grow you as well of personal interest, and also you as a person are going to develop. And that's like more on the soft skills. You're going to learn to know yourself so much by working in such different environments, where you're also with people and colleagues all the time. You're not just working with them, you're living with them as well. And you're gonna get a mirror effect on yourself to really learn to know yourself much more. And there's gonna be hard times through that. And overall, it is really a richness of growing as a person. And people that apply to us don't always realize that dimension of how much they will be changed over their assignments. And of course, for the better, but it is a whole process, and we are there to accompany you on that. And as I explained, building your career over several missions and investing in training you, we are wishing you to be there to engage with the organization, being able to combine working in the field with your life in Norway or Iceland, because the need of the organization is really to be able to grow you up in management and coordination positions, where we have the biggest need for our international staff. So that is a prerequisite to take into account when you apply for MSF. The conditions are listed here, and they are listed on our website as well. I would normally go through them and read them, but for a matter of time, I will just let you take a little look. And if you have questions on it, don't hesitate afterwards. And then for the students among you, then it's from Norway. We have Studenten Uten Grenser that you can join through your university, and you're able to organize debates, participate to very interesting evenings already about MSF, to build your way up later on, maybe to go out to the field one day. And please check out those two links, because many of our staff actually first were as students already part of this organization. And if you wish to contribute already starting to work here in Norway before maybe one day applying, we're always in need of people in our fundraising team. So here's the link as well. Now the end part is, after all this evening, you go on our website, Job for Us, and you check out all the different sections of information that we ask you through to read through before you finally apply. Send us all your documents. They come to us. We will go through them. We will pre-screen them based on our needs, based on what your profile is, based on the needs at the time, maybe also on language skills, etc. We'll go through many questionnaires with you to assess your technical skills as well. And in the end, we will have a small selection that makes it through to the actual interview part. And that is through a recruitment assessment center all day that is normally held at the office. And when it's not possible, we do it online. And then in the end, people make it through or don't. The ones that make it through, they'll be offered the possibility to join Leger Uten Grenser within the pool of field staff. And then there is an onboarding day. There will be training planned for you, and you will finally, and it can take from 4 weeks all the way up to 12 months, depending on the needs in the field, take that time to find you your actual first assignment. What's important to say, people often ask the question, what if I apply once and I'm not ready yet to go out? Do I lose my chance to apply again? No, you don't. So applying is also a way for us to analyze your profile and give you feedback on what there is to develop further. So now I'll give the floor to the questions. The last link is to look here. I took away this, but this is our website, this is our email address, so just contact us, but more importantly, ask us many questions. Now the floor is Luam's with the questions.
Thank you, Emily. Then I will invite Bodil and Shanti to also turn on your cameras, as you'll also be answering questions with us. All right. So we can start. We can start with the question for Bodil. So it would be great to hear from Bodil how long her 2 missions lasted, as well as how she coped with being away from family and friends for a long period of time.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for the question. I was supposed to go to Libya on a 9-month mission. It was like Emily said, I signed up for it and it was okay with me. But when I was in Libya, and it was due to the visa situation, the Libyan authorities, they refused to renew the visa for all the NGOs. So I stayed in Tunis for a while because we had to go to Tunis to renew the visa because maybe to try to resolve the situation, but it was not possible. And so in Libya, I then was for almost 5 months. Because I didn't want to work remote. I wanted to really be in the field. And I went back to Norway. I got my COVID vaccines. And I said, hey, I have a leave from my work in Norway. I want to go on another mission. And I was 5 months in Libya then. And then I went 3 months to Baghdad on a new mission. And how I managed to be away from my home, the internet was quite good, and I thought about it a lot of times. For 20 years or 10 years ago, it must have been so much more difficult. We had good internet connection, and I was able to talk with friends and family and messenger and videos, and so it was okay. It was okay. It was good. So totally, I was away in 2 missions for 8 months totally. Yeah.
Thank you.
And just people to know, if we don't manage to answer all questions tonight, we'll of course make sure that you get an answer to your questions in another way.
And then let's move on to a question about the tropical disease. Does MSF offer regular or any training in tropical disease? And there was a second question. Is it possible to travel without the course as a midwife, without the course in tropical disease? And yeah, is it possible to, let's say, I'm just looking at the different comments here. Is it possible to apply or get recruited without having the training first?
So I guess you want me to answer that question, and the answer is unfortunately no. We need it. It's a big prerequisite for midwives, for the medicals as such to all. And if we do provide them, no, we don't. We need you to have checked the list of accreditation and enroll. And what you can do is, once that you know that you got a spot confirmed by the course, you can already apply and tell us. For instance, there's one that many Scandinavians do, is the one in Copenhagen that is held in August. Then people apply and they say, hey, I'm already enrolled in August coming. So then we can take that into account, because that means that basically we can even take you through an interview process and know that you're ready to be on the plane in September as soon as you have your course.
And then I will go to a couple of questions about health. I'm soon 67 years old, but in good health. Is there any possibility to go out? And then there was a second one that is, what is the exclusion criteria for good health? Is, for instance, asthma or allergies something that will limit one from getting the job at MSF?
So I think you also wish me to answer that one, and it is no, as such, there is no exclusion criteria. We need you to be in good health. We need you to know what you need for your health condition as such. But we're not listing any discriminatory conditions medically, but we would look at it on a case by case basis, also on what's possible in the project, what you can access for your needs, and the most important moment will be the clearance from your medical doctor that will assess compared to the conditions in the field if you're able to go out.
Okay, and there's
let's hear also from the mental health profiles tonight. You can grill Bodil and Shanti as much as you like, so go for it.
Should I try then? Okay, I'm jumping a bit in between here. Let's go for okay. Let's try. Okay, I'll go for this question first for Bodil. I would like to hear from Bodil on how to approach management with her home job in Haugesund.
Well, I'm not quite sure. I hope I understand the question.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I have been working, like I said, in this at my place for 15 years, and I had also my boss. I think if he could at that time, the former boss, he really would have been working for MSF. So when we started talking about this, he said, "Yes, of course you will get a leave." And I planned it well in advance, so it was quite easy really to do it, and having the support and also the very organized contracts with MSF, it was easy for me doing it. So I'm not sure if I really answered the question, but this is the way it is. I don't know, Shanti, if you have more experience, because you talk also to a lot of people coming from the field and have the experience of going out and coming back.
Yeah, I think that one good thing to approach with is the fact that you will be taking home so much learning. There's invaluable learning to be had that you will bring back to your team. Also, if you're if you're on a contract position, so a vicariat, then it's probably a bit more difficult. But if you're in a permanent position, you can ask for a leave of absence, unpaid leave of absence. And when you approach management, saying that you will be deploying with MSF, then mostly they will recognize the added value that you will bring back to your team, because these are the lessons that you learn in the field are hard to get from books. And when you come back with everything that you bring back with you, you will definitely strengthen your teams, and particularly in terms of cultural sensitivity, of diversity, humility, and of how to work with refugees, and in terms of working with interpreters. There's just so much skill share that you can bring back to your teams, and a lot of managers actually very much realize that. I think that would, if that answered some of it, at least.
Thank you. I have a few questions that are related to kind of who fits into this profile of mental health workers. So there's one question on whether or not international social workers are needed, or if it's only local social workers in our mental health programs. And then we have another also social worker who is working with poor and addicts for more than 10 years, and will soon also be a Gestalt therapist. So the questions here are these relevant backgrounds to work with mental health?
you want me to do this, Emily, or do you want to do it?
Yeah, I'm sorry,
So,
I'm not really
yeah.
telling who to answer, but yes, feel free.
But I can answer this. I also saw a question of someone who has a master's in clinical and child psychology, but studying from Hungary and not being authorized in Norway. So if you're going to deploy as a mental health profile in Norway with MSF Norway, you need an authorization as a Norwegian clinical psychologist or as a psychiatrist. Those are the basic criteria that we need. So when it comes to social work and masters, there might be other profiles that you're eligible for, but going out as a mental health a supervisor or a mental health activity manager, you need an authorization as a clinical psychologist from Norway or a degree in psychiatry.
Thank you. And I can just add that there. So as a social worker, you could be eligible, as Shanti is saying, for other positions. So one of those positions is as a health promoter. There are opportunities there. So please go on the website and look for that. As a health promoter, you would be the person in different ways, managing a team of local staff, or being a part of a team with local staff, and being in charge of getting out specific information into communities on how to address certain diseases, let's say HIV or anything else that we are working on. I don't know if you want to add something on that description, Emily, but you can find information on that on the website, at least. So there's that opportunity. And also I can just add that there is space for this profile that's called like, if you're a clinical social worker, which I have never seen this in Norway, this background. And Shanti and we discussed this at some point, and I understood this is something more found in the US, for example. But just to say, if you are from a context where this profile exists, and you're a clinical social worker, you could also be eligible to work with mental health in MSF. But there's always a screening process and many criteria to fill. So just get in touch if you think you fit into one of these profiles. Yes. Then
Luam?
Yes.
Yeah, I saw a question about the management that I wish to answer, about someone asking if it's only if it's only possible to have management, supervision, training experience from before, when you're a student or when you were a volunteer, before your professional years. So it can be very relevant to have worked as a student and along your life in training, supervising groups, but you will on top of that need to have had it also in your profession. But definitely a combination of all is the best that you can have. However, it is not sufficient if it's only from before your studies of your profession. And then some people have asked questions on if this job is possible part-time. That's not possible part-time. No, when you're out in the field, you're not there 100%, you will be there 200% or even more. So that is what it will take. And yes, someone asked about data analysis. Data analysis for the position of remuneration analyst, benchmarker. Go and check out the profile. You might be really relevant there. Internship for students we do take in some departments, so check out our website. That's more for then positions in Norway, for the departments in Norway. Definitely a way forward for the students. And then I'll hand over to Question Master Luam.
I'm happy that you take over. It's fine. So I can just answer. Well, Emily, you got to follow up on your answer. You see the last question there.
And
I
then
meant if you mentor groups of young people while being a professional, or if you as a professional need to mentor other professionals regarding managing people.
So in the field, you will be a manager and you will manage other professionals, your team.
Yeah.
They might be local. They might also come from another country like you. The experience that we need to recruit you needs to be experience. For instance, a clinical psychologist, you would have to have done supervision management as a clinical psychologist in your home country or elsewhere around the world. That doesn't matter. So I hope now it is clearer. And someone's asking that he's Norwegian and fluent in French and English. Medical secretary. So then check out the HR finance profile, because indeed that might be a very relevant profile. Yeah.
And for the tropical medicine course, I can just say there's a whole list on our website of where you can take the classes, because I'm getting questions about the price or that it's expensive. So I just want to say there are different options, but the only one in Norway is the one at Oslo Nya Høgskole. So there's a bargain there. Bargaining, I mean. Either you pay for the class here or maybe you can find it for free somewhere else. And then there is a question about if there is a need now for Arabic English cultural mediator. And if I can just answer that myself, Emily, I would just say that that is something that is always kind of varying, let's say. That need comes and goes, and we are very happy to receive applicants for that position, but it doesn't mean that that there are any opportunities necessarily now. But we're very happy to receive the application and just to kind of keep you in the loop if something would come up.
And there's a good question for Bodil and Shanti.
Yeah, exactly.
About
there was
psychologist.
Sorry?
There's a good question. I can read it quickly. So she's a young psychologist. And she finds that there's little room for managing other clinical psychologists at workplace. It's more like providing supervision for other health professionals or non-health professionals. Could Bodil start and Shanti complement on that?
Yes, I'll try to do that. Well, it's a very good start then. Also giving supervision to other groups working with people, because it's actually what we do when we are in field. We're working with people that has maybe not so much training and at least not very much education in being, for example, a counselor. And you really need to have the ability to explain, for example, what I said, basic communication skills. You have to really do it in a good way. And you start doing it in Norway and then you can do it in Baghdad. It's not a big difference then. So you just start at one point and then you elaborate and you get more experience, of course. I think also as you work as a psychologist, you will get more and more experience, and it's valuable. So I don't know what you say, Shanti.
Yeah, agreed. I think that it's also important to know that in the field we work, the way that we work is with interdisciplinary teams. So being able to talk about psychological aspects of life to a person who might not be a clinical psychologist is very valuable. And when you do supervise and train or mentor or counsel other interdisciplinary colleagues, then you get that experience, and that's valuable. And I also wanted to just answer Celia, because she's asked, hello Shanti, what are common topics field workers need to debrief when returning home after a mission? I thought that was an important question. So let me say a bit broadly about that. So I find that you come home with strong impressions. those strong impressions, they can be good impressions and they can be really challenging impressions. And it varies from person to person, because we're unique, so we bring to the field certain things that might affect us particularly, and that varies from person to person. But being very close to suffering, being in a position where you might not have all of the resources that you would want and that you don't have at home, or that you have at home rather, that you don't have in the field, to be able to help as much as you would like. There can be, obviously there are the few times where there's traumatic events and critical incidents, but that's not the most common topics that come into my room. The most common topics that come into my room are contextual or interrelational. So how does it work with your team? How do you find the context that you're in? Is it very different from what you're used to at home, and how does that affect you? And sometimes it's really hard to hear people's stories. You heard Bodil talk about her missions, and of course those are missions where there are particularly horrible stories sometimes, and that can affect us. So I think it's also, in general, it's about finding a way to process all of the impressions that you experience and that you get when you're in the field, and kind of reset and regain balance. And sometimes coming home is the hardest part. Re-entering this, like what one of my field workers called the social wheel. So what you experience when you're in the field, it might feel very strange or even impossible to talk about at home. So the re-entry, I like to refer to deployment with MSF as repetitive voluntary migration, and that in itself is something that needs a bit of you need to find the tips and tricks that work for you, if I can say it like that. I hope that answered your question, Silja. Thank you for asking it.
And then we just have a few last questions now. Some of them are from the start, so I'll just go to them first.
And I actually read them, Luam, if you want to straight away that I start on it.
Go for it.
For Patrick, geologist, so I would say maybe the logistics family. I will humbly say I don't know enough about the depth of the geologist, but check out the logistics profiles and let us know if you find relevancy there, and don't hesitate to send us an email also with your CV so we have more details. Then on the 9 to 12 month deal breaker, so yes, the answer is yes, unless you're a surgeon, anesthesiologist, or gynae, or emergency doctor or intensivist, we need you to be available up to 12 months for your first assignment. It might be that you're not in the field 12 months, but your availability needs to be there, and you having freed yourself from all responsibility back at home and with a possible employer as well. And then on how long it takes to get an answer, big max, when you apply, you'll get an answer within the first 8 weeks, but the process is going to take longer than 8 weeks. So that's as far as I saw, and then we're gonna also show you just one little last movie clip.
There's still a couple, Emily. So one is, if you can just quickly comment on how the COVID pandemic has affected fieldwork, logistics, recruitment, staff, etc.
So overall, very difficult to move. So that means move people, move material, forth and back. Then all the quarantining needed, the sudden changes all over the place, the extra administrative documents, the possible vaccinations. And at the very beginning of the pandemic, it was considerations on, okay, what if a staff goes out, contracts COVID over there, how would they come back? How would they feel if one of their beloved was to contract COVID here and they were stuck in the field, not there for the last days maybe of close, but so many considerations. So it affected everybody, logistics wise, personally wise, and then of course how to say, humanitarian advocacy wise, because what our teams were seeing in the field versus the means that are put in place by our governments over here, and still today, the way that the vaccination is being politicized and dealt with are very provoking and horrendous discrepancies and inequalities in the world that just come out even stronger to us. So I don't know if I said everything, but clearly it affected the organization and it made everything just more complex.
And before I turn on the video, I will just make two small comments. So one is a clarification question from one person about whether or not the verneplayer is, I perceive the question as, is a verneplayer kind of counted as a social worker and also relevant? And we don't have a position where verneplayer specifically are asked for or recruited for, but you can always check all the profiles on our website and your combined experience, background, languages, education, your work experience, all of this, and see if it fits one of the profiles. But there isn't one where we're specifically recruiting vernepleiere. And then one last thing, I think you already touched upon this, Emily, but I just want to say, if you're a student and you want to work part-time in MSF Norway, go on the website, look at the jobs that we have in Norway. But for field, as Emily said, it's impossible to work part-time. So that's that. And I will now share a video, right? Or did you want to say something more? Yeah, I'll just share it.
There's one, do you need helsesykepleier? It just came like a couple of minutes ago.
But that's it's again the same, I would say. We don't specifically recruit helsesykepleiere, but we recruit sykepleiere nurses. So you just have to look at all the criteria that we have. If you have worked in a hospital for at least 2 years, which is what we require for nurses, if you've done that before becoming a helsesykepleier, and it's not too long ago, you could be relevant, but it's very difficult to answer just based on that. So have a look at the criteria. If you think you fill them, or if you think you want to work towards that, get in touch.
Lands both far and near, I embarked on an arduous journey. I took the roads less travelled. I flew far beyond the mountains. He healed a mother and child. He climbed into the clouds. He risked it all for a better life. He breathed fire. She fought little evil creatures. She earned her shining armor. She addressed the giants of the empire.
Stop bombing health workers. Stop bombing patients.
She gave the elixir of life. She taught the magic spells. She unveiled the way. They showered us with their generosity. They screamed their indignation. They swallowed magic potions.
Where is the human rights? This is not camp, this is prison.
They learnt how to walk. They lost their way. We found them between the sea and the stars. We had the help of wizards. We built castles. We kept precious treasures safe. We traveled into the future. We did all of this thanks to you.
So thank you everybody for tonight. Thank you for joining. Thank you for your interest, for staying along on a Wednesday evening. And thank you very much, Budil, for all you shared tonight, and Shanti for joining in. And Luam, she made it all happen with her withered hands. And people, look, if you are touched by this, if this speaks to you, then please don't hesitate. Consider working for Leger Uten Grenzen. We're all, the four of us, there. We've been several times on assignments. We're there for soon we can start counting in decades. So it must mean something that this engagement we have is still burning so strong. And you can work for us, and you can also support us in other ways. There is through fundraising, and there is also through sharing our communication on social media, elsewhere where you see it. Don't hesitate. Go on, spread the people we need to work in the field. All you mental health profiles, please remember that we need you, and we need all the other non-medicals, medicals, paramedicals. So wishing you all a good evening. Thanks a lot, and hope to one day meet you in person. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.